The moment our fellow geeks, dweebs, nerds, and other unfortunates have been fervently waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI, Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Jeff Nerf Herder Chandler and Jim Kaiju Baker. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
All right, can we just barrel through?
Yeah, hell yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm feeling it.
As we record this, we are in the midst of October, the scariest month of the year. So we decided what better time than now to not only revisit our 5 bucket list, but to induct one of the most suspenseful, action-packed, that's maybe scary isn't quite the word for what we're about to induct, but
there's a couple jump scare moments, but I think overall it is intense.
Yes. So we thought it was apropos for October to induct Aliens today.
Yeah, because we really don't like scary movies, so you're never going to hear us talk about Saw.
Well, actually, that's a misnomer. Jeff does not like scary movies. Every once in a while, I try to input a scary movie as long as it's not that
Yeah, well,
scary.
what are we watching next week? Night of the Living Dead.
Hey, it's black and white. Come on.
I have seen it before, but still,
It's one of the tamer. If you watch, I don't think anybody watches it anymore every week, but if you watch Walking Dead every week, The Night of the Living Dead
nobody watches it anymore. It is true. We dropped the ball big time once poor Rick Grimes was off there. Who's going to care when that movie comes out? Nobody's going to care.
So, but we digress. We didn't even get to the fanfare yet. Aliens inducted today into the 5 bucket list. Sound the trumpets. There we go.
It.
Aliens.
All hail the Marine Corps, right?
Now, this movie had so much to live up to in 1986.
Did it?
Did it? What are you talking about? Did it? Are you implying that Alien is not the perfect space horror movie?
It was a horror movie, and it probably we should be talking about that if you want to really talk about a scary movie in October. But this is a different genre. He took the same universe, but this really is a completely different movie.
This is apples and oranges.
And I'm going to say I saw Alien, not in the theater. I remember a kid in the back of the bus reading it, 1979, the novel.
The Alan Dean Foster
Yes,
novelization.
correct. But it had that, the famous cracked egg in space, no one can hear you scream. But I saw Alien on my grandfather's TV, probably HBO. It was dark, it was gritty, it was dirty, it was scary. But when the trailers for this movie first came out, it was unlike anything that you had seen in the Alien. I mean, because in the first one, you have one boogeyman, you have one alien, and he's making his way, and he's just systematically taking out. In this movie, you see right away, there are hundreds of these things. This is one of the first movies I remember standing in line for. This came out July 86.
Now, we mentioned this a little bit in previous episodes, but pretty much every high-ticket movie of the early 80s, like Raiders, Jedi, Empire, I remember standing in line for. So
this was I was living in Queens because I was still going to school on Long Island, and I was sequestered away. And you had mentioned this, one of the what was the movie last week when you saw the line and you was like, I'll just wait. Batman. This was the thing. We were all lined up inside a hallway in the bottom of this movie theater, this multiplex in Queens, maybe Astoria. I don't recall the exact theater. Whitestone, maybe. It might have been the Whitestone. And the kid I was with had a transistor radio, and we were listening to the Mets game. Obviously, that's the year the Mets won the World Series. And so he was listening to diehard Mets, and I remember that like it was yesterday, just waiting, packed people in this little tiny hallway. We didn't have cell phones to occupy our time. You just sat there smelling the other funk.
Now, as you mentioned before, the movie tie-in, if you didn't have HBO, that was really a kids-only access to an R-rated movie. That's how you got around the system, was buying the movie tie-in or having your parents buy you the movie tie-in.
Yeah, my aunt went into 7-Eleven and bought me the Alien book. It was like a, black and white magazine, whatever.
Probably put out by Warren Publishing, who put out Famous Monsters.
It probably was either that or probably not even Starlog at the time. It probably
and I
was
remember there was also a graphic novel of the original Alien. It was called Alien: The Illustrated Story, which I had
it's beautiful,
as well.
Beautifully done. I have the hard copy, the hardcover.
So there were ways for us kids to know everything there was to know about Alien without actually seeing the movie itself. Be it Famous Monsters or Starlog or Fantastic
and
Films,
just seeing a still shot of the double jaws coming out of his mouth with the saliva and the drool was enough to elicit.
And there was even a top series of bubblegum cards that you work out the whole plot from just seeing these 100 cards with photos in chronological order.
I used to line them up. Yep, and let's not forget about the action figure,
the infamous Kenner action figure, which sold nothing. Probably I was one of the only ones that received it that Christmas of 1979.
Because no kid, it was an R-rated movie. What kid wants a stupid monster that he's never seen the movie for? And it's a horrific looking monster to begin with.
It is.
Because he had the glow in the dark, like almost like a skull on his head, which doesn't really translate in the movie.
No, because he's got you see it a little bit every once in a while in the movie because he's got a translucent dome, which they removed in the second movie for the aliens in this one. So I was obsessed with the movie Alien. And as I mentioned on one of our previous episodes, I remember going to see the Muppet movie with my buddy Kevin. And it was a 2-cinema theater. And after the Muppet movie was over, one of our parents was picking us up. They weren't there yet. And it was probably 15 minutes before that they were going to show up. It was those days when you could still do that and with 8-year-olds in a movie theater. Yeah. So we were just sitting in the lobby and we decided, hey, let's sneak a peek at Alien. We tried to get into those movie doors. The hand came down on my shoulder. The usher was like, "Where are you going, kids?" Similarly to Jeff, I didn't see it until probably a couple years later, maybe on HBO, but I definitely remember seeing it on ABC, which was
I remember you sharing the graphic.
Heavily edited 1984 ABC broadcast, which I videotaped and watched over and over and over again. So by the time Aliens came out in 1986, I was so steeped already in the Alien universe that I was just besides myself waiting for this movie to come out. Now, apparently, sequel plans were in the works as early as 1979 when the first movie was in the theater. But Alan Ladd Jr., who was the president of 20th Century Fox at that time, had greenlit the sequel, but he left later that year in 1979. They got new ownership who had no investment whatsoever in an Alien sequel. They thought it would be too costly for an R-rated movie and it wouldn't give the returns because I don't think Alien had done anything near Star Wars. It was still, I think, made a lot of money for an R-rated movie, but it didn't have the potential that a Star Wars or Empire Strikes Back.
It's not speaking to the same audience.
There was no enthusiasm for the project at 20th Century Fox once it changed leadership. So the sequel kind of sat dormant for years until James Cameron's Terminator script started to circulate. So on the strength of the Terminator script, before that movie even came out, he got the job to write the sequel to Aliens because by that time
I didn't realize that this was all kind of that he was hired before Terminator was really released.
And so once Terminator was released, on the strength of that movie, he got the job to direct it, not only to write Aliens but to also direct
which
it,
is pretty impressive when you consider he really didn't have any credits. I mean, Piranha 2,
and he was working as second unit on Roger Corman movies.
So you hand this kid the scripts. I mean, based on his script, you're like, all right, we like what you write so much, we're going to just let you direct it.
Which is crazy. A movie an Alien sequel is no less.
Right, correct, because it did have a pedigree. It wasn't like a standalone movie. I was shocked to learn that.
And apparently Ridley Scott at the time had no interest in doing this himself. I don't even know if he was approached or if 20th Century Fox...
I heard he still has no interest, even though he's made 5 other movies.
No, it's you that has no interest, Jeff. It's you.
Listen, we're not talking about Prometheus. We're not talking about the half bucket movie. We're talking 5 buckets here.
So back to Cameron. So he, on the strength of Terminator, and apparently while he was making Terminator, certain shots and certain setups in Terminator, he was kind of testing out for future things for Alien. So he had that very much in his mind while he was making Terminator.
Smart
So
move.
it was like all aliens all the time for him. As we said before, that Alien is almost like a perfect textbook horror movie. It's a haunted house movie in space.
Yeah.
Where you're holding back on the title creature, just much like Spielberg did in Jaws.
Yeah.
Not
Out of
really by necessity,
I was going to
but
say, yeah.
but I think they just took that lesson where less is more. And Scott did a lot with that in the first Alien. But Cameron wanted to go in a completely different direction. He didn't want to compete with the first Alien. So he decided to make something different.
Yeah, and he did. I mean, there's a reason we're talking about this today, because this is a near perfect movie. I mean, cinematography is brilliant. The action buildup is brilliant. The characters are brilliant. I mean, Cameron is
so memorable as well. All these
correct.
characters.
I mean, Cameron has become a bit of a smug asshole over the years, but this really was his coming out party. I mean, you can't argue the merits. I mean,
oh yeah, and the behind the scenes stories about this movie kind of point to that direction. You read about how the English crew and Cameron just did not see eye to eye.
Yeah, they
all.
did. They thought he was unworthy. But then again, Terminator had not come out yet, so they really just thought he was just some unnamed kid who lucked into getting this because he was married to the producer.
Right. So they thought this whole thing was a joke, and most
right.
of this crew.
We get it. You were the quote unquote director because you were sleeping with the producer.
And most of the crew members, since they were filming in Pinewood Studios, had worked on Alien with Ridley Scott.
Yeah, which was a large, and they had utmost respect for Ridley Scott.
So it's almost like film fans who take these as Alien versus Aliens. They kind of had that same viewpoint where who do you think you are doing this?
Yeah, they had like a personal connection to the first movie.
And Cameron, for his part, not being used to English crews, like they would take a tea break every day. And he'd be like, what's going on? Why is everybody leaving?
Right.
So, and that didn't ingratiate himself with them either. Yeah. And he tried to show them at one point, he set up a screening for Terminator.
Look, I'm a brilliant genius. Come watch my movie. And no one did.
No one showed up.
No one showed up.
I envisioned him and his wife, the only ones in the theater watching his own movie.
She's like rubbing his shoulders. No, it's really good, honey. It's really good. Yeah, I'm going to divorce you in a couple of years, but it's really good.
So with all this drama going on, he still managed to make a cinematic landmark.
Listen, now outside of Empire, this may be the greatest sequel ever made.
Now, Stan Winston is the effects man here in this movie. So he took the Giger designs of the Xenomorph.
H.R. Giger.
H.R. Giger.
Yep.
No relation again to H.R. Puffin stuff.
Oh, I'd like to see Giger reimagine
I would love to
Puffin stuff.
Yeah. Living Island, designed by H.R. Giger.
We talked about Tim Burton doing that. That would be great.
Just imagine the talking mushrooms alone in the hands of Giger. Yeah. Forget about it. I thought the Xenomorph was phallic. But yeah, Stan Winston takes over from Giger, and he changed it enough just so it made it his, not so much his own, but the Xenomorph and Aliens belongs to this movie and not the previous movie.
Right.
So we've got the same shuttle. We've got Ripley in hypersleep in the Narcissus shuttle, which she used to escape the Nostromo when she had her last stand with the alien. Yeah. So it turns out that she's been floating for 57 years, was it?
Yeah, it's 57 years.
She just happens to be picked up by a salvage crew, which still I'm not really understanding what they were after. Were they just trying to sell that ship and they couldn't?
Yeah, they could have been like Jawas in space, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just finding, we got tons of crap up there.
So now they've got to report it, and they can't take the ship.
Like, oh, damn it. There's a person in here.
In there, yeah.
Someone. And I will point out that opening shot where the laser beam thing comes in and scans the smoke-filled shuttle, like, the studio refused to pay for that, and Cameron bought that with his own money.
Really? I was going to say, did they borrow that from The Who and their stage show? Yeah,
Quadrophenia tour? Yeah. He wanted that thing so bad that he ended up ponying up the money because he just wanted that stupid toy to be in his movie.
And for fans of the first movie, it is integral that you see this, and it is a very nice recreation of the inside of that shuttle.
Not only that, you see the harpoon.
Yes.
The harpoon is still stuck in the bottom of the hatch.
Now I just wanted to point out that the version of this that I watched for this episode was the theatrical version. I did not watch the
director's cut either. Although I swear, when I saw this in the theater, that they had that scene with her daughter.
I don't remember that in the theater.
But again, that's, over the years, it's like people who tell me that they remember seeing Star Wars differently. That was, Luke wasn't driving, or Luke was driving, not 3PO, or, people got different versions of what they remember. Sometimes you read the novel or comic and you get it mixed in with what you really saw. But I remember seeing that, or at least I thought I did. But yeah, it's part of the director's cut.
But yeah, most of the added scenes in the director's cut take place during these opening moments of Alien, where you see Ripley woken up. She never actually makes it back to Earth. She's on a space station the whole beginning of the movie. Paul Reiser, who is a representative of the Weyland-Yutani company, is kind of her concierge, her liaison for her company man.
Her keeper. He's got to keep a leash on her.
So they have to question her about why she destroyed, a $1 billion towing vehicle. They don't believe her story, why her crew is dead.
We sat down there on company orders to get this thing, which destroyed my crew and your expensive ship.
But you would think that...
Imagine coming out of hyperspace 57 years later and they're like, what the hell you been doing? What happened?
Yeah. You would think that the Weyland company is just so insidious that they would know full well what they were bringing back. It's not like...
Well, they're the ones that woke them up, right?
Yeah.
They knew what was going on.
And so, and you find out a little later, as she's telling the story about LV-426, where they touched down and found the derelict spaceship, that Paul Reiser takes it upon himself to contact the colonists there and to tell them to go search out that spaceship, which sets this whole thing in motion. So
nice going.
If he didn't do that, they would have never found that derelict spaceship and life would have gone on for LV-426.
I don't know. I blame Ripley.
Yeah, you could blame this whole thing on her. You could. So they inform her that there's a bunch of colonists on this planet. Then they lose contact with them almost immediately. It's like, it's like the next day after they tell her that planet's been colonized, they lose contact. So then they ask her to come along because they're going to send out a squad of Marines to go up there and check out why they've lost contact. And they ask Ripley to come along as an advisor only.
And she didn't want to, right? Was she not?
No.
Why would you want to go back there?
Absolutely.
She didn't even want to sign on for this movie. She had no interest in reprising this role.
No,
it wasn't until she read the script. Well, I think she was more connected with the mother-daughter relationship between her and Newt. I thought she really kind of latched onto that. But she only got, so in the first movie she made $35,000. And this one, they gave her $1 million, which I guess is pretty substantial, but still, in this day and age, that's nothing. When Arnold Schwarzenegger at that time was making $20 million a movie, and I think they paid her $1 million to shave her head in the third one.
They did? Really? An extra $1 million just to shave her head?
Just to shave her head, correct.
Now, is it in her contract that she has to be in her underwear at some point in all of these Alien movies?
I'd still pay to see her in her underwear. I don't give a shit. Yeah, because that end scene in Alien is still kind of titillating.
You see Sigourney in all her glory, again, in the opening and closing shots of this film when she's going into hypersleep with the Marines. Now, the Marines themselves are very memorable. You've got Bill Paxton as Hudson, probably the most memorable of all.
Game over, man. Game over.
So put her in charge.
What is it, Private?
How do I get out of this chicken outfit?
You secure that Hudson.
But you also have the character of Michael Biehn. Bean.
Bean.
Mr. Bean.
Mr. Bean.
He is Hicks. He is Corporal Hicks in this movie, Ripley's love interest. And of course, Lance Henriksen as Bishop. And now,
every one of these characters is iconic.
They are. And Ripley doesn't realize that there's an android on board. Now, in the first Alien, you didn't even get a sense if like robots were a normal thing, or if
he was like some kind of a weird anomaly.
If Ash was like something that nobody had ever seen before in that universe,
right?
Or what?
That is one of the more disturbing scenes in Alien, is when he goes haywire and she, that milk spewing all over the place.
Right. So
more so than an alien eating your head off.
So apparently that's a normal thing for robots to exist in society in this universe. So once she realizes that there is an android on board, she kind of flips out.
Yep.
And Bishop is kind of insulted a little bit, I think.
I know when I've been insulted.
His throwaway explanation for Ash trying to kill her. Well, those were notoriously twitchy. Those
right. He just kind of dismisses it that it was like the iPod 2.0.
Right.
Like, yeah, I'm a 4.0, honey.
And
you got nothing to worry about me. I mean, 57 years of technology have come and gone.
And who could forget the scene where Bishop puts his hand on top of Hudson's hand and they do the knife trick?
I heard that, or I read that was like improvised.
Really?
Yeah, that Hendrickson kind of decided to do that
with Paxton's hand.
Paxton's hand. It is sped up. You can tell that it's sped up, the film.
So you've got this whole cast of characters, and the Sarge.
All right, ladies.
The Sarge is always yelling at Hudson, and there's that one part where he says, "Look into my eye," and I'm like, what does that mean? What does that even mean? So you have this crew on their way to LV-426. And they can't just land their ship. They have to free fall for some reason into the atmosphere. It's not like they can just fly down easily.
No, but it's a great effect.
It is a great effect.
And that whole just watching, it's so rudimentary. The the kind of like the pathway, and they're just little rectangle squares that he has to kind of stay in the middle of. But it's very effective. It's very well done.
And so they get down to the planet LV-426, and you realize that the colonists are there to not only populate but to create an atmosphere. So what they've built is this giant, almost like a nuclear power plant, but what it does is that it creates oxygen on this planet. So
which is probably, if we ever colonize Mars, that's exactly what we'd have to do.
Mm-hmm. So it turns out that the colonists are all gone. Once they get there, they find no trace of the colonists except for Newt, this little girl.
This little girl survived longer than that with no weapons and no training.
Why don't you put her in charge?
You better just start dealing with it, Hudson.
That has survived the initial onslaught of these aliens.
And that's the one thing in the director's cut, you do kind of see her family, and I'm glad that it was cut, because I don't think it adds anything.
Where they actually find the derelict.
Yeah,
ship,
correct,
right.
Yeah.
And you realize that it was Newt herself that was her family.
Again, you got to connect the dots. It's like, why does it have to be her?
As you said, I think that it was smart on Cameron's part, because it is a cool scene. You do get to see the derelict ship again.
Right, correct.
But again, it's another distance from that first movie to not include that, to make this movie its own thing. Those sequences where in the first Alien, where Dallas and Lambert and Kane is going into those very vaginal
openings, yeah.
While this family, just goes through a little crack in the hull of the spaceship that they find. It's not as impressive. And how does the wife even drag the husband out of there if he has to go into that chamber that Kane did?
No, leave it ambiguous.
That scene in. So the soldiers realize that all the colonists, they're in this conversion atmosphere. What do they even call it?
I don't know what they called it. But yeah, they were all huddled. You see like the little iconic little red dots.
Yeah. So that's where they find
all these colonists. They're all hiding.
They're all hiding there.
No, they're not hiding.
So the soldiers all have to go into this atmosphere converter, and it turns out that this is where the aliens are as well. They find the classic resin all over the walls that the aliens secrete from whatever orifices that they have. And they find one of the colonists alive, cocooned to the wall, with an open egg right in front of her. Yeah. And just as she's about to release a chest burster. But before they find her, it's revealed that if any of these Marines fire their weapons in this facility, that they're going to spark some kind of a chain reaction, and which would be devastating for the entire planet.
Don't fire your weapons. So what happens?
So at this point, I think it's a good idea to retreat, but no, they do not.
We keep going in. And and again, this is where it gets into like haunted house kind of mentality, where you're claustrophobic. These guys are seeing this stuff through their visors, and Ripley's watching this on the computer screens or whatever, and they're just going deeper and deeper, and you know what they're going to confront. What's going to happen. As the audience, you know exactly what's going to happen.
At this point, after repeated viewings of Aliens, this sequence from when they land on LV-426 to when they actually encounter the aliens is what doesn't hold up for me. Because the first time you see it, all this buildup of them going through the facility, going through the colony, and then making their way to that processing plant, the suspense is just unbearable, because you don't know when the aliens are going to show up.
Right.
But when you've seen it already, and you realize that you've got to sit through 25 minutes of this before they get to the aliens. You're like, okay, I'm going to fast forward this because I know nothing's going to happen.
Let me go warm up those nachos.
Yeah. So this is the only part that doesn't hold up. I think it takes too long for them to get into the action.
Okay, fair enough.
I appreciate the suspense, but yeah, after the first time, it's just not there for you anymore. Yeah. But once they do find the aliens, the firefight starts. That the movie doesn't stop.
No, it is relentless. And the soundtrack, we need to talk about James Horner. Is that
James
right?
Horner? Yeah,
James Horner, who I guess had to write this like overnight.
Yeah, because he never even saw the finished movie.
No,
before
and
wrote
he had to leave it because he was committed to another movie, and I guess he was not too happy that James Cameron stepped in and basically hacked apart his soundtrack.
Yeah, and he vowed never to work with him again, but then he did.
Yeah, okay. Titanic came along, so they're like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, okay, I'll make up." But they still, that iconic metal clanging Terminator sound makes its way into here as well, especially when they're evacing in that. I don't even know what do you call that Land Rover type of thing on the wheels. That's intense.
It's like a space Batmobile. It was very similar to the Batmobile from Tim Burton's Batmobile.
But that sound, that iconic ting ting ting, that chinking metal on metal.
Did Horner do the music for Terminator too? Because
I don't think so, but I think that Cameron stole that. He's like, that's mine. I made that.
Mm-hmm. Now's as good as time as any to talk about the design of the aliens themselves, because as we said, Stan Winston was the designer of these. He removed that translucent dome from their headpieces. So now all you see is that skull type structure on their dome heads with some spines.
And you probably could just theorize that in the original Alien, it was still an infant stage, and just like a bug, it basically molts. That translucent thing could have come off at an early age or whatever. So, but as a kid, or even like when I was watching this, it looked enough like the same Alien to me that I wouldn't have been able to tell the difference that there was design.
Now, here's the big question on repeated viewings. Like, the logic of this kind of goes out the window because nobody's ever seen these things before. Yet, when they're on their way to the planet, they say that these are xenomorphs, as if it's a well-known term.
Right. Yeah.
Like they haven't.
They just kind of like throwing it out there.
And even Hudson says, "Oh, it's just another bug hunt." Well, have they met aliens before or not? Because they don't.
I don't know. To me, and when I hear the word bug hunt, I think Starship Troopers.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So have they or have they not encountered these creatures before? Because in some scenes, it seems like they have. But in some, they don't believe Ripley.
Right. Because at this point, all they're taking is Ripley's word of mouth account, so it could be anything. I don't know, but did they use the word xenomorph in Alien?
No, they never did.
No, right,
they never did. So they encounter the aliens. Vasquez and a couple of the troops refuse to relinquish their weapons, so they fire some rounds in this processing, which sets off the chain reaction, which is going to cause the whole thing to explode a little bit later in the movie. There's a firefight. A lot of the troops go down. A lot of them are burned by the acid, which sprays all over the place whenever an alien gets shot. So they escape because Ripley drives this Batmobile thing right into the plant.
Yeah, because Burke didn't want to do anything. He was going to leave him in there.
And there's that great scene when they're just about to leave, and the alien, before those doors shut on the vehicle, the alien reaches his head in, pulls open the doors, reaches his head in, and then I think it's Hicks that puts the shotgun right in its mouth and blows its head off. So that's when you know what kind of a movie you're in for.
It is like you said. Once you get to that scene, it doesn't let up.
And that's when Bill Paxton's character comes to the fore, because he just starts having a nervous breakdown.
He's like losing his freaking mind. Wouldn't you? Right?
Oh yeah. He's the voice of the audience. Really.
Yeah.
Is Hudson, and it's such a sad moment when he goes, because then he does get a hero death too, when the aliens just grab him from underneath and pull him down into the floor. From this point on, it's them trying to barricade themselves in the complex of the colonists. And at the same time, trying to get that, because apparently nobody's on the ship up above. Everybody's left the ship that's circling the planet.
Right, it's just like floating up there in Hyper Park.
So Bishop has to get himself outside of the complex to remote control another smaller ship to come down off the main ship to pick them up before this whole thing blows up.
Which does look a lot like one of those H.K. Hunter in Terminator, the ships in Terminator as well, that you see in the opening shot of the future. And you can tell it doesn't hold up. It is model work, but still.
Yeah, there's a lot of
back screen
matte painting going on. So with the Blu-ray, it really reveals some of the limitations that they were working with. But that's some of the charm of a movie from this period.
Yes, correct.
You really see the budget on screen. You see the artwork, but still you can appreciate it for what it is.
Oh yeah, no, it definitely advances the story forward. It's not.
So as we move on, we have the great scene where the aliens actually attack the compound where they've barricaded themselves.
They're all around us, man. They're right on top of us.
They're in the room. This can't be reading right. For some reason, no one even thought.
Looking in the basement or the attic, right?
There's panels up in the ceiling. I wonder if there's a crawl space up there. Yeah, no.
And that's a pretty impressive scene too, because they are just skittering across, coming right at you.
Yeah, talk about bugs. They look very
right.
much like an ant colony or something when they're all together.
Which is great.
Like
So so they took the slow plot, because you never really saw the alien in the first movie like running.
No,
He was always like standing still. It was a jump scare. You know, Dallas would turn around and poof, there he is.
Much less like doing somersaults and hanging upside down.
Yeah.
Like
so these things
do.
are like, you're like, again, you're not seeing something you'd seen before. I mean, you're seeing something, unlike the previous. You're like, guys, things are like hyper.
So after that attack, Hudson goes down, Vasquez goes down.
Yeah.
Paul Reiser's character goes down because he reveals himself to be the scumbag that he is. He is really the Weyland-Yutani man 100%, because he's trying to get these aliens back to Earth. So much so that once Ripley realizes what he's done, that he's the one that sent the colonists to the derelict ship, he tries to kill her and Newt and make it look like an accident. So,
and that's a cool scene as well, where they're locked in the med lab with a face hugger.
Something else you never saw.
No, because the face hugger, I mean, while it's disgusting, you saw it like jump onto John Hurt's face and then, it dies. They cut him off. But this thing is just, I mean, it's skittering around. Its tail is just, it's.
Yeah, for anybody that doesn't like spiders, we're going to hate that sequence right there.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Towards the end of the movie is when Newt, for some reason or other, she gets separated from Hicks and Ripley. And there's a great scene when she's in this like sewage portion of the complex. My God,
so iconic.
And they're trying to cut through the ceiling to get to her because they're just out of reach. And they're like, stay where you are, Newt, stay where you are. One of the best shots in this movie is the tail coming out of the water behind her, and then the alien revealing out of the water behind her. Just kind of like lifting up.
And then you just hear that blood-curdling scream she has.
And then you see the doll's head.
Yep, and then you finally break through. Newt! I think Ripley's dialogue was just Newt about 1,000 times.
Yeah. So Bishop finally contacts the ship. He's got a ship to get them off the planet, but Newt is now captured, so they can't leave yet until Ripley goes into the main complex to rescue Newt. That's where she encounters the alien queen. Another brand new creation for this film.
Beautiful, beautiful. I mean, this is a full-on maquette. I don't want to call it a Muppet, but it is a fully realized, probably 18, 20-foot marionette.
There's people inside the suit. There's puppeteers outside the suit.
It is,
and it is done flawlessly.
Beautiful. To see that live, to see that in person would be unbelievable.
Now, there was some bonus footage on the box set that I have that shows them doing test shots of this thing in the parking lot of Pinewood Studios.
Oh, it probably falls apart a bit.
But it doesn't. It doesn't.
Oh, yeah.
It's unbelievable what you're looking at, even in that footage. Like, how are they pulling this off? Because it moves the exact same way as it does in the movie.
Right.
This test footage.
Yeah, and think about that. Like when you just saw King Kong on Broadway, it's the same principle.
Yeah, it is. But for somehow,
artistically,
without any computer,
and it's a fully realized character. I mean, there are stop motion models mixed in when it does break loose and it's chasing them. You do get a mix of different mediums as far as how they created this thing.
Mm-hmm. But completely practical, all in camera. It's just amazing.
Very impressive
to think that what's going on, what you can't see, that's making this thing move.
Yeah, but you're right. That scene where she finally catches Newt. And now her and what's his name? They tape together a bunch of different guns. She's got the flamethrower and the friggin' rocket launcher all taped together, which is just genius. And she makes her way, and all of a sudden she realizes they're standing in the nest. There's just hundreds of eggs all around them, and they're confronted with this thing, which is a beautiful reveal. Now, I don't remember if you saw the Queen in any of the trailers. I don't think so. I think that was a nice.
I don't think so either.
But you did see her in the load lifter, which plays heavily into the end.
Right.
I do remember that where the bay doors open and the lights are swirling, and you just see her standing in the load lifter,
which is a beautiful illusion because for all intents and purposes, that thing looks like it weighs 5 tons. That load lifter.
Now there was a puppeteer behind her, so she's physically in this thing. They built this. It's a real world scale. Right, it's probably lightweight. It doesn't weigh 100,000 pounds like it looks like it does. But you add the special effects with, you add those sound effects to it, and it just adds weight.
Again, and the knowledge that there's a puppeteer behind that, and they managed to hide it. perfectly.
Yeah, there's somebody inside that thing kind of manipulating it with her. And that's the whole maternal instinct. You know, you've got the mother queen protecting her eggs, and you've got Ripley protecting Newt. So it's, it's just, it's so well done.
You know, what's funny is that even when I saw this in the theater, you know, you're on the edge of your seat. I remember the viewing in the theater. I think I saw this on opening weekend. And like we said, from that initial scene where the aliens first make their appearance to the end, you're on the edge of your seat throughout this movie.
It's an intense movie.
Like you didn't even want to take a breath. So you don't really question. There's another countdown, and they do use a very similar voice to the mother voice to give that countdown, just like at the end of Alien. So she has only a few minutes to escape before this whole thing blows up. And you think to yourself, there's no way that this can be happening in real time.
Right.
I was counting down myself viewing. It works.
It works. It completely works. Because most movies cheat that stuff.
Yeah.
And there was another movie where we were watching it recently, and it was like a 5-minute countdown. And I'm like, there is no way. And my son and I went and we watched it, and we're like, it's exactly 5 minutes. So there's points, right, where they play fast and loose with that stuff. But in this regard, he held true.
She frees Newt. She sends some grenades into the egg sac of the queen. Yeah. There's a great scene where the queen follows her up in the second elevator. Like the queen figures out
this
how
whole
to
thing
work
is just
the elevator.
exploding. You got explosions left and right. Bishop's falling down.
Yep, and she thinks Bishop has abandoned her.
Yeah, because you get to the platform and he's gone, and you're like, you son of a! She's got screwed over by the robot again.
The ship couldn't stay there because the balcony was too unstable. So he did just a lap around the complex.
Yeah, I'd be like, I'm screwing with you.
So he shows back up. She gets on the ship, and you don't really see how that queen had enough time to get on the ship.
It is kind of questionable, but it doesn't matter because again, it's a brilliant, and that's not a jump scare, but it is because it's like we just got off this planet. We avoided disaster. My entire team is out. But I rescued Newt, and there's Bishop, and he's like, yeah, good job. And all of a sudden, you just see him in slow motion go backwards, and you're like, he's pulling a friggin' ash. He's going, and then you realize it's the queen alien's tail.
She's on the ship.
Right.
So the movie's not. So this movie could have ended with that scene with the thing blown up, and you would have been completely satisfied with that, right?
He takes it to the next level, and then it's just straight on badass Ripley. You can't do better.
And almost like a King Kong versus Godzilla battle scene between the loader and the alien queen was just two giants duking it out.
And we got the teaser with the loader that we knew she knew how to work in, but you got Newt underneath, running through the the little under the gantry, I guess, and this thing is just chasing her, and that reveal where she opens up the bay doors and she's in that suit. And again, it's a mix of live, practical, in your face, actual size mannequins, the queen, and then there's other scenes where they pull back and they're little versions kind of a thing, but it works seamlessly.
And once the loader and the queen fall down that one hatch right where the outer doors are that open up to outer space, and the lights are just brightly lit down onto the alien queen, and the tail's just whipping around.
Yeah.
It looks
beautiful,
wonderul.
I would be scared to be dealing with this thing.
Yes, it's
right.
Like
we talk about being in the water with Bruce, right?
Yeah. I don't want to be anywhere near this thing, even though it's
you'd be in awe of it. Actually, I think they wanted to use it for something else and they couldn't find it. It just disappeared. Like this puppet just like disappeared. Nobody had access to it.
Really?
Didn't know whatever happened to it.
It's probably sitting in somebody's garage, right?
Yeah.
Until they can figure out who to sell it to. By the time the credits roll and Hicks and Newt and Ripley and what's left of Bishop go into hypersleep.
Yeah, because Bishop gets ripped in half. Yep.
You are just
But he
exhausted.
still saves Newt. Yeah.
This movie exhausts you just from watching it.
I wanted to go into hyper's chamber.
Yeah.
Put me to sleep for 57 more years.
So now here, being the alien purist of 1979's Alien, I do have some issues with, I liked the idea of keeping whatever this thing was kind of in mystery. Like, are these eggs weapons? Are they supposed to be bombs? Are they supposed to be engineered by what you later find out are the engineers? You don't really know what the derelict is, if the alien impregnated this crew, or if it somehow got loose and impregnated the crew, or they had this as it's a bioweapon, which is you later found out is kind of what
that's
it is.
Exactly, yeah.
So Aliens goes that extra step and attempts to explain that, no, there's an alien queen there.
Queen.
So I think it takes away a little bit of the mystery of the first movie by maybe over-explaining it, but it doesn't matter when you're watching Aliens because you're just swept away in the storyline of what's happening here. It's very easy for me to watch Aliens disconnected from the first Alien movie.
Oh, absolutely.
I can watch them as, their own universes, their own storyline, and they don't really need to intertwine for me. They're two both very good, very well done movies. Yes,
correct.
And they can exist simultaneously.
Yeah, but do you feel the same way about Alien 3?
Absolutely not.
No.
I think they should have never made that.
It's an abomination. It undoes everything that happens in this movie.
Within seconds.
Within seconds. Yep. Nope. Fincher, listen, David Fincher, brilliant director. He's got some. He should not have touched this movie.
No,
if
and
you
Cameron
want to connect
was
these
very
universes,
upset. Cameron hated it.
Of course, we hated it.
These characters that he built, that he created, that audiences loved, were killed.
It negates everything. It negates everything that happened in this movie.
Yeah, why Sigourney agreed to do this?
Well, like I said, they paid her an extra $1 million to shave her head. She's like, okay.
But why would you feel necessary to do that? Like, at least bring back those characters. I
know. Well, so let's talk about that, because whatever happened to this Neil Blomkamp sequel that was supposed to take place directly after this? This has been in talks for years.
And this was going on. This was still being talked about after Prometheus.
Right. Yeah.
They were still going to do this.
Yeah, and they were leaking production, of Ripley, and they were bringing back New. I mean, how are they going to bring back New? You can't have the same actress. But it was supposed to be a direct sequel to Aliens, and that just has disappeared. Although, what has he done lately? He was riding high there for a while with District 9.
District 9. And then what was that movie about the robot?
Chappie,
yes.
Chappie, which I wasn't all that keen on. Did he also direct the one with the Elysium? Elysium.
He did.
Yeah. Which I did like, because he has a very unique vision and style to his stuff. But yeah, he was champion for this movie. And like I said, they were releasing some character designs and production sketches, and this was a go. Yeah. And then nothing.
Yeah, and Alien Resurrection.
I will take Resurrection over 3 any day. Because I really liked where they took Ripley.
Yeah, but they had no recourse but to go off that storyline from 3, which was just so terrible.
Right.
So,
yeah, you put a movie like that, right. But I think Resurrection had some redeeming qualities to it.
It was bizarre. It was extremely bizarre.
Most of all, Winona Ryder.
Now, I don't think there was any merchandising per se around Aliens.
They're unstoppable! But we've got to give it our best shot! Thunder the Marines!
We're the Space Marines. Drake, Ripley, Apone, Bishop, and I'm Hicks, armed with the latest high-tech heavy metal. Queen alien breathing down your back? I blast her with the bug rocker. Button heads with a bull alien? Ripley frags him with the turbo torch. Alien invasion problem?
Send in the Marines!
Space Marine figures and alien figures, each sold separately.
Maybe it was Diamond Select came out with a model figure similar to the original Kenner version of the Alien version.
He was pretty high end too.
Yeah, it was like $500. I'm sorry, if you're going to do a recreation of an old toy, don't price it higher than what you can get the old toy for on eBay.
That is true.
Nobody's going to buy it.
Yeah. You want a replica, or you just want to?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there was any old world like toys that came out during that time. Yeah.
But so there was precious little in the way of stuff that you could buy in relation to this movie.
No.
Other than your normal, Fantastic Film Starlog magazine covers. But yeah, it was a big release for us back in 1986.
No, it was huge. It was big.
And Sigourney Weaver nominated for Best Actress, which never happened for a sci-fi movie.
For an action movie like that, yeah.
Yeah, no. That kind of ushered in sci-fi movies in general being accepted by the Academy Awards.
And female protagonists in general. Right. I mean, Dark Horse has had the license. Dark Horse did, numerous comic books. And I think they did justice to a lot of that. Some of these Alien versus Predator and all this other stuff that came out was they were just capitalizing on the aliens. Do you know that the Alien nest set was reused for Batman?
Yes,
the Axis chemical set,
which we just talked about.
Yeah, we did last episode. How crazy is that? I guess supposedly it was all like closed up, and when they went there, like all the eggs and everything were like still standing. So that must have been pretty interesting. You walk in there and you're like Ripley going, what the holy crap.
Does Newt annoy you at all?
Affirmative.
Affirmative.
All her little lines that she gets, like,
I thought that
they
was
could have
cute.
dialed down
That's-
the Newt just a little bit.
Well,
We better get back, because it'll be dark soon, and they mostly come at night. Mostly.
I don't know. She works for me. She did scream a little too much, but
So $5 bucket.
$5 buckets.
Well deserved.
Absolutely.
Aliens.
Yes.
James Cameron. He was with Linda Hamilton for a while.
Yeah, that's
wasn't
all I'm saying is that this guy just became a smug ass. I mean, he's come out and he's poo-pooed the Star Wars movies. He's poo-pooed the Marvel movies. We'll be making 8 movies of Avatar.
Yeah, the jury is still out if anybody even cares anymore about Avatar.
No, and that's, I mean, I get it that the Pandora, the world in Disney is pretty impressive. And that movie, when it came out, was mind-boggling. It was probably the only movie my wife has ever walked out of a theater and said, I want to see that again in 3D. Like now. But it is just Dancing with Wolves in space.
It's no aliens, let me tell you that.
It is no aliens.
Yeah.
And now he's connected. He's back. Executive producing this new Terminator?
Yeah.
Dark
Yeah, he
Fate or
is.
whatever that
He
is. We will talk about it.
We'll need to talk about it.
I don't think they're bringing anything new to the table.
No.
I don't think I'm seeing anything that I haven't seen before.
Many times over with the Terminator,
correct,
especially.
correct.
Yeah.
Lackluster. And there's another one, T2 completely changed the game from the first Terminator. T2
that is a discussion for another episode.
It is. That is another
Yes.
$5 bucket discussion.
Yeah.
Yes.
Next week, actually. Let's talk about what we're going to do next week.
Ooh,
We
how do we
are
do that?
revisiting. Well, we never visited it in the first place, but Zombieland.
Zombieland, yeah.
Reviewing.
Double tap.
And along with Zombieland, we're going to the master, the originator of the zombie genre, George A. Romero, with his original classic, Night of the Living Dead.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
So stay tuned for that.
There
So
you
that is
go.
going to be our special Halloween episode.
Nice. I'm sure you're already pulling sound bites as we speak.
Yeah. So until then, again, thank you for
that's
listening.
it. All right. Affirmative. Bye.
Game over, man. It's game over. What the are we gonna do now? What are we gonna do?
Hudson, come here.
Come here. Look into my eye.
Fall in, people.